Supreme Court yesterday adjourned hearing to February 22 the case between 3 All Progressives Congress states and the federal government on the legality of the old Naira notes. Although the court did not formally extend its earlier order stopping the federal government from barring people from spending the old Naira notes, the court insisted that its earlier order remained in force. However, 6 other states of the governing All Progressives Congress, Lagos, Cross River, Ogun, Ekiti, Ondo, and Sokoto, joined their counterparts, Kaduna, Kogi, and Zamfara, in the legal battle against their ruling federal government. The court directed the plaintiffs to amend their originating summons to reflect the name of the 6 fresh plaintiffs and granted the application of Bayelsa and Edo states to be joined as respondents.
We are in court because Nigerians are suffering as a result of this CBN modeled up cashless versus currency redesign. That is why we are here today. And from the understanding we have from this court, the order made by these honorable justices still subsists up till Wednesday when the matter will be heard.
We are working towards solving this problem. It's a national problem, and we are working towards solving this problem. There aren't 2 sides. We are affected on both sides. We are trying to solve it. Please, I want you to know the government is not deliberately frustrating the plaintiffs. This is a problem that we are trying to solve. With a little time, it will be solved. Please, I beg you, let us not inflame it. It's going to be solved. It's being solved. We are getting over it.
The policy or directive given by the CBN governor becomes inconsequential in the light of the fact that the court has extended the lifespan of the interim order it granted on the 8th of February to the fact that the old notes and the new notes, all of them are legal tenders in Nigeria. So until the motion or note is taken on Wednesday. So that is the current position as of now. Any other step in contrary to that will be in contravention of the orders of the court.
Well, joining us now is Mr. James Chukwuneye Ezike, a lawyer. Good morning, sir, and welcome to the morning show.
Good morning.
Well, Mr. Ezike, before you joined us, we attempted a review of the president's speech this morning. The president, ahead of the adjourned date of the Supreme Court, has now gone ahead to say that the old 200 Naira notes should remain legal tender till April 10, even beyond the order that had been given by the Supreme Court. Although he said in paragraph 15 of his statement that he was aware of the matter in court, but he had also consulted wisely. What do you think is the implication of this latest development and decision taken by the federal government of Nigeria with regard to the matter in court?
Thank you very much. I am very, very proud of what is going on because our problem in Nigeria is constitutional, including what is going on there. How many people are aware that in the United States, a judgment was given by the Supreme Court to allow the native Indians to use where they are belonging to them, and that the president said, John Marshall, who was the Chief Justice of the United States, you've given your judgment, now go and enforce it. It happened in the United States of America. In this country, we allowed courts to do what they're not supposed to do. If you remember, when the Gore and Bush matter election petition went to court, every judge of the Supreme Court who gave a judgment prefaced his judgment with this, and I said, that the reason why they are even given the judgment at all is because they know that times have changed and it will be obeyed. But otherwise, that they won't go ahead. If they feel that it won't be obeyed, they won't do it as such. So when it comes to constitutional matters, People complain, for instance, that the courts gave judgment saying that some people who were detained should be released, but it was not done, and several things like that. I do understand that there are things that courts should be cautious about, because if you give a judgment and it's not enforced, it is a waste of time. So I don't know any other country where you allow courts to get involved in some of these matters. We allow them to get involved in. What you need in this country is a new constitution that would enable the system to work. Right now, we have a dictatorship of a constitution, and so the president gives this instruction. Some of us would ask the question, why did we even have to change the currency in the first place? What is it all about, if we begin to look at it that way? Asking courts to do this or do that is unfair to the judges. The judges are battling with so many things. For instance, we need in this country a constitutional court. We don't have it. We don't have a constitutional court. The Supreme Court is, you can do land matters in the Supreme Court. Can you do a land matter in the United States Supreme Court? A hire purchase matter? Whatever, trademark matter? Unless it has constitutional implication. In Germany, they have a constitutional court. It's not like here you have senior advocates and all that. In Germany, you know that you are not qualified to appear there, not because they will stop you. They won't stop you. You see the quality of judges there, you know you don't belong in that place. So our problem is more fundamental than whatever the president says, because this thing happening with the currency will affect the politics, it will affect the economy. And maybe there will be a run on some banks in the final analysis.
Yeah.
Can you?
All right, Mr. Ezike, thank you very much. So for a number of people following the president's address, there were some contentions, some of which you've already spoken to, with regards to the fact that we just had the Supreme Court give an order yesterday. The president is speaking this morning. Who do the banks obey? Because the Supreme Court, even though you've said that in terms of the Constitution, there are matters that do not quite concern them, but they have given an order and it's still in court. Prior to this, the president had said that he was going to obey the rule of law. Is this not deviating from what he said? And then doesn't this leave the people who have to act on this in a conundrum? Who do they obey?
Yes. Well, the answer is in the question. What gave rise to all these things? It is called confusion. And that confusion has arisen over the years because nobody knows the limitation of the powers of the federal government and the state governments. And we haven't got a constitution that is well demarcated or made by the people. Let me repeat what I've said over the years, namely that unless this country is formed on the basis of complementarity and subsidiarity, we will continue having these problems. When you do it that way, then things will flow naturally. I mean, how can you give one man so much power? In the 60s, we used to have a local authority police. In the north, they called it local authority was not in the southwest, including Midwest. It was native authority police. It didn't really work well. It was abused by the politicians, namely because of what Peter Obi was able to do when he was governor in Anambra State. Who will police the police? So the same thing goes all the way to the state level until you get to the presidency. Do we contest elections here? No, it's conquest.
No, so I'm trying to get you right. So are you saying that the word of the Supreme Court doesn't count here? Because the Supreme Court has said, given an injunction to stay on this. And secondly, I'd like to ask, are you saying that the governors do not have the right to take the case to the Supreme Court in the first place? Because the Supreme Court assumed jurisdiction like you lawyers say, you talk about jurisdiction a lot, before they could even hear the case in the first place.
Yes.
And those are part of the things they will be listening to on the 22nd when they talk about it. They will review all of that, because that's even the argument of the federal government against those that sue the state governments that sue the federal government. So are you saying the governments have no right to do that? Are you saying that the Supreme Court's word should not be listened to?
No, what I said is that I'm proud that actually when courts give these judgments, they are obeyed. That's what I opened up with. Because the possibility exists that they will be disobeyed. I'm proud of the fact that...
But what is happening now is at variance with what the Supreme Court said.
Yes, that's why they went to court, because they want to obey it. And I'm saying that in some climes, they will just do what they like. They will do what they like.
No, Mr. Ezike, you are still not answering the question.
Okay, maybe I
The
didn't
Supreme
understand.
Court ruled that the status quo antebellum should be maintained, right, till Wednesday this week, February 15, right?
Yes, February 22nd.
No, 15.
15th
this week.
22nd.
And then the Supreme Court was asked by Mustafa SAN, counsel for the defendants, or for I think for the plaintiffs, that the Supreme Court should restate the order. And the judge, the presiding judge, the lead justice, said, look, no, our order stands, right? Which means, okay, now that the matter has been adjourned till February 22nd, it subsists till that time,
yes,
when they hear the notice or motion, and the various parties to the suit will have consolidated their matters. Now, before that 22nd, the president of Nigeria comes and says, okay, the old 200 Naira notes should remain, the 500 and 200, should 500 and 1,000 people should take the money to the CBN as the CBN has advised. Now, the question now is, yes, the president has powers under Section 5 of the 1999 Constitution. Is there a conflict here between the executive powers and the procedure that is before the court? That is a question.
Yes.
Or the president, with his responsibility under Section 5 and under Section 14, which, although in Chapter 2, can take this decision. I thought that was what you were hinting at, but you were talking about constitutional crisis and all that. Yes, it's a constitutional crisis, but what exactly is the implication of what has developed?
Well, the implication of what has developed is that there's no rule of law.
There's no what?
Rule of law, as far as it concerns what is going on in the court and the presidency. And rule of law is at the heart of democracy. What we have here is total misconception. When the military left, the understanding of the Constitution was that once the judiciary says this, it has to be obeyed. That was what it was. And they continued obeying it under Obasanjo up to Jonathan, and continued until Buhari came to power. I remember Dasuki was granted bail several times. Nobody did anything about it. So there was another person who was granted bail, and it was ignored. Okay, the leader of the Shiites, until he eventually was allowed to go, as it is. So, but why I was pointing out what happened in the United States is that these things are bound to happen when there's a lacuna. And therefore, if we have a constitutional court, those things will now be explored and solved. The Supreme Court is being asked to act in so many capacities. So if they give a judgment in land matters, of course it will be carried out. And so because of that mentality that they do these things, they do trademark, they do all manner of litigations, they can convict somebody or find him guilty or discharge him, and it works. Then we fail to understand the power tussle between the executive and the judiciary all over the world. And this is what is going on. Finally, maybe I'm not intelligent. I still don't understand this currency thing, what it's all about. Because why should it be at this point in time that we are changing the currency? If it is a matter of policy, for instance, to stop using money for election rigging or vote buying, they should say it and stand by it. That is, if, for instance, Buhari wants to conduct a clean, fair, and free election, he should stand by it, and history will know him for it, that yes, he went all the way.
Well, he did reiterate it this morning during his address. He did mention that, in fact, that was one of his parting shots, that it's timely because it's just before elections, and part of what they're trying to do is to minimize vote buying or election induced by money or votes induced by money. So he has stated it, and he has also reiterated a number of times that he's committed to leaving a legacy of a free, fair and credible election. So he hasn't minced words about that.
Today?
Yes, today. And even previously. But just to talk about this statement around the absence of the rule of law. So what then is the essence of going to court? What then is the essence of still having a Supreme Court judgment if the executive, in this case the president, would decide which one he wants to obey or not? Is that not tantamount to a state of lawlessness and anarchy?
I agree with you. That's what I'm saying, that it's not the first country in the world where it happened. Many people are not aware that the final court in the United Kingdom is not their own Supreme Court. It used to be called House of Lords. The final court in England is the House of Commons. Many people don't know that. That any judgment given by the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom can be changed by the Parliament sitting as a court and changing it. Remember the Obama oil case and so many others. And in other words, they don't have a sovereign legislator in England. It's not sovereign.
But the reform you are asking for, I mean, that maybe in the future.
Yes.
That will require constitutional amendment. But the questions we're raising relate to where we are now.
And
he asked the question about jurisdiction. People have, the federal government is saying, look, the Supreme Court has no jurisdiction. Some people say the state governments, have no jurisdiction. You still have not addressed that.
I have addressed it by saying that unless we go for the fundamental solution, as a matter of fact, it was under Abacha for the first time that it was seriously considered, this question of having a constitutional court. But ironically, it was the judges of the Supreme Court who opposed it and said, let the Court of Appeal be the constitutional court.
Well, thank you very much for your time this morning, Mr. James Ezike. Mr. James Ezike is a constitutional and commercial lawyer.